From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
Place they can afford to call home.
Governor Dan McKee's $13.7 billion budget proposal is now in lawmakers' hands. His pitch to the General Assembly: cut taxes on retirement income and ask voters to borrow nearly $350 million for initiatives including housing and a new state archive building. But the tax and spending plan could be bad news for the state's public schools.
We're worried about that. We're definitely worried about it.
This week on Newsmakers, everything you need to know about the budget plan with the Reporters Roundtable. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside 12 News politics editor Ted Nesi, and joining us on a Reporters Roundtable this week, Nancy Lavin from Rhode Island Current, and we welcome back Steph Machado from the Boston Globe. We are talking about we're recording this on a Friday morning. The budget briefing and the release of the governor's budget happened on Thursday, so we're dissecting that for everyone today. And I want to go around the table first to find your top takeaway from the governor's budget proposal. Ted, we'll start with you.
Well, there's a million places you could go talking about the budget. It's a pretty big...
Actually, 13.7 billion.
Yeah, well, yeah, you took the number out of my mouth because, we've been hearing so much about the federal spigots turning off, the budget's got to shrink, et cetera, and it's shrinking from $14 billion to $13.7 billion. So I don't want to minimize $300 million of changes. That's real money, that's programs, et cetera. But, we've got to remember in 2019 to 20, that fiscal year right before COVID, the budget was $9-point-something billion total with federal funds. So it has grown enormously and it's staying very big. So there's a lot of reasons for that. We'll talk about that. But just, Rhode Island has a sizably bigger government than it did before COVID.
As the COVID money, as you point out, is evaporating. All right, Steph, what's your key takeaway?
One of my big takeaways was about education. As we know, Governor McKee is hoping to get Rhode Island up to Massachusetts levels in terms of test scores and other factors. And he's making some cuts to education. Some districts are getting an increase, some districts are getting a cut, but it's certainly not an across-the-board increase for public school districts across Rhode Island, many of which are struggling significantly.
Yeah, we're going to spend some time on education. Nancy Lavin.
I think the tax changes are kind of striking because there are cuts to the things that people seem to really want, like education and primary care doctor reimbursement rates. But at the same time, he's making these kind of very small tax changes that make it seem like he's doing something good for businesses that don't have to pay these kind of nuisance fees, or maybe fewer of them will have to pay the corporate minimum tax. Retirees who make under $50,000 now would not see their retirement income tax rather than $20,000. But he's not really giving big benefits to businesses, to state pensioners, the things that people are clamoring for.
Yeah, to Nancy's point there, I was thinking about, as I read everybody's coverage, ours as well as the other our august competitors, and I don't know what the big takeaway for the average Rhode Islander, who understandably is not going to read every page of the budget, is the way that some years, 1 year it was Rhode Island Promise under Raimondo, the free college plan. Last year, the big headline I would say was the proposal by McKee to cut the sales tax down to 6.85%,
which didn't happen.
Which was really tiny as it
which,
is.
Right, yeah. was both, attention grabbing, criticized as tiny, yet also criticized as too expensive by lawmakers. This year, there's a lot of different things going on, but I don't know yet that there's that one thing that's going to define the budget conversation.
Maybe the one thing that caught people's ear didn't appear in the budget, but in his State of the State, and we'll get to this on the program, but was that goal that McKee set to increase people's income by $20,000 by 2030, I think it was. So maybe that probably stands out to people, but we'll find out. First, as you could hear, we could go anywhere on this topic, but why don't we start with education, which affects every city and town. Steph, I'm going to go to you, but first, nearly $2 billion, I think, in total in this budget proposal. But as you alluded to in your first answer, there is bad news for many of the state's public schools. Enrollment is declining in almost every district, and that means less money for those districts. You and I met up with the Education Commissioner, Angelica Infante-Green, after the budget briefing this week to ask her about that. Take a listen. What is the impact of declining enrollment to school districts' bottom lines?
It's tough. It's a tough place to be. I mean, we're lucky that our state has really held our districts harmless, and there will be an off-ramp. Because what happens, people might say, well, what's the difference? 10 kids, it doesn't matter. It does matter if they're sitting in 3 different grades. You can't close a classroom. You can't consolidate. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But some of our districts lost 100 kids. Some of our districts lost 50 kids. Some of them lost 5 kids. I think we only have 5 or 6 districts that saw an increase. Every one of our districts saw a decline. And that's very scary for us as a state, because as it declines, there's less money into our system, and there's less ability for us to serve the kids in a more meaningful way. Especially when the ESSER dollars go away, you're definitely going to feel it.
Angelica Infante Green, after the budget briefing on Thursday, ESSER dollars, we should point out, is some of that COVID relief money that's been sloshing around and, as I said, is evaporating. You know, it kind of felt like the budget, and I will defer to you on this analysis, but it felt like to me in the budget, to offset some of those losses that many districts are going to see, including Providence, state-run Providence, they put more money into multilingual learners, $16.6 million, but that's not great news for Tiverton, North Kingstown, I think, saw a decline in enrollment, but might not have a ton of multilingual learners. I could be wrong about that, but you know, is that what you think they were doing?
Yeah, and I think, listen, it makes sense that state aid to schools is tied to enrollment. If the district has more kids, they need more money. But the problem is that when enrollment drops over 1 year or 2 years, the district's budget is not dropping by that much. They still have to keep the lights on. They have to keep all the schools open. It's not like all the kids who left were all in one classroom and they can just shut that down, which is sort of what the commissioner was alluding to. And Providence is going to close schools. They've already closed some in the last few years. They're going to close more. The question is which schools and when. But the McKee administration is saying the cuts would have been even worse if they had not put in all this extra money for multilingual learners. That money will be distributed based on how many multilingual learners districts have. So in Providence, they're going to, huge cut because of the drop in enrollment, but then they're going to get a lot of the MLL money, and it's going to. But
I would say, if for a regular person listening to the state, you didn't hear like, okay, school districts, you're going to have to tighten your belts. It sounded like an invest in education budget.
That's
and when you
absolutely
look
right.
at all these different moving parts, I'm not sure it's going to feel that way at the district level.
Yeah,
That's
the commissioner
right.
is saying she's putting out the warning flags to districts, and she's even saying, and she said to Kim Kalunian on 12 News at 4, there will be layoffs. She was clear about it.
Yes, and at the briefing we went to yesterday, they really emphasized how much additional money they were putting into education, but then when you look in the sort of technical appendix and you see all the negative numbers, it tells a different picture.
I want to ask one final question, well, at least for this part on education, and that is there is additional money for pre-K.
That's right.
In the budget, but isn't it hard to hire teachers right now? Yeah,
the state is trying to get to universal pre-K, meaning every 3-year-old has the option to go to pre-K if their parents want to send them, but we're having trouble filling the existing pre-K classrooms. So Governor McKee's budget would add 35 more classrooms, but if the early educators aren't there to hire, then it's going to be difficult to staff those classrooms. And we know they're having trouble staffing the classrooms now. We asked the commissioner about that as well yesterday, and she acknowledged, yeah, this is going to be hard.
Nancy, we heard Brian Daniels multiple times. He's the director of the Office of Budget and Management. He repeatedly stressed it's important not to spend the fading federal COVID money on things that could create out year, you have to pay for them in the out years. In other words, spend it on one-time things. But it struck me that he said that, yet there were some pretty big ticket items in the budget using COVID federal dollars that are really just plugging holes that will probably remain.
Right. Well, it's also interesting with that. So there's $50 million of already allocated COVID money that basically was kind of a use it or lose it proposition.
By
and
2025.
They're worried they're going to lose it because the people they gave it to, are either having timeline issues or staffing issues. They can't spend it. So they're repurposing it. And 2 of the ways they're repurposing it are to close departmental budget deficits that ostensibly are going to be reoccurring every year, and those are at the Department of Corrections and RIPTA. So
it's $20 million and $10 million respectively, is that right?
Yes, and RIPTA is, people have been decrying RIPTA's fiscal cliff for years and years. Transit advocates want $110 million for RIPTA. They're getting 10, and the deficit is $18 million. So it still leaves them with an $8 million deficit, and they don't really have an answer for how they're going to fix that except do a study. So they would not say when they were asked at the briefing yesterday, are you going to cut bus lines? Are you going to not fill all of the open bus driver positions, or are there going to be layoffs? They wouldn't say. They said, oh, we're going to do a study and that'll fix it.
RIPTA does feel increasingly friendless, I would say, up on Smith Hill as I watch, read the tea leaves. I mean, Senate President Ruggiero has had them in his crosshairs, let's say, for a year now, trying to restructure the board, putting Alvini in charge. He and McKee just are, I would say, somewhat quietly trying to put a labor's union person and someone else, allies of Alvini, on the RIPTA board to sort of push through changes that he wants. To get this money, they're going to have to do a feasibility study to show, how they can get RIPTA managed better. And, RIPTA seems to be caught in this permanent problem where it doesn't have as big a user base as the MBTA, which means it doesn't have as much political pressure from voters because it's not got enough cross-section of people, yet it also doesn't have enough money to do what it's being tasked to do. Very challenging times.
And like we were talking about before we went on, Rhode Island has to decide if RIPTA is a business or a public service. I was just thinking about with the free ferries that they were doing because of the Washington Bridge debacle, and they just provided this free public transit. You didn't have to pay to go on the ferry. And I don't know, not that many people used it, but the ones who did were like, this is amazing. And Rhode Island had to decide if it wants to fund RIPTA in a way that it was convenient for people, even people who can afford cars, to use to get around.
And this is a problem governments always face with. The MBTA faces this in Massachusetts. The United States Post Office faces this. Is it a business that needs to be run on a, if it makes enough money, we do it, and if it doesn't, we close it? But then what happens to RIPTA, for example? If they go to close a line that they say doesn't have a profitable ridership, General Assembly members who represent that community will squawk, and then they have to put it back.
We're going to have to go to a break pretty soon, but I want to talk about this before we do and bring up a slide from the slide deck that the budget folks, the bean counters, provided to reporters ahead of time. And it's about the deficit, if we could bring that up. And what we're looking at here is the projected budget deficit over the next 5 years based on the governor's budget proposal. Now you see that black line, you look at it, it goes down, and you think, great, the budget deficit is projected to go down. It's actually just the opposite. And on the far left, that is, we have a balanced budget, actually a surplus of $900,000 if McKee's budget is approved by the General Assembly as it is, which it won't be, it'll be changed. But then all of a sudden it just drops off, Ted, to a massive budget deficit in the next year. And the two other lines I want to point out were the projected budget deficits based on last year's budget. So things were looking pretty good. What happened? Yeah,
Alex, our director, leave this up for a second longer. So what you're seeing there is the change in the outlook over the last couple of years. So look at that second set of numbers as you go across the chart. You see in 2 years ago, they thought the budget after this one would only have a $73 million deficit. And honestly, I've covered budgets a long time. That's like a rounding error. It's not that bad. Now, as we are getting closer to that year's budget, instead of things improving or stabilizing, it's tripled, $244 million. Wow. Why is that? Because revenue growth is not expected to be as good, and they are making big spending commitments, the political leaders in Smith Hill, without making tax changes to bring in the revenue to pay for it. I know we're going to talk about Medicaid and adding to the Medicaid budget. That's a big driver of that.
Well, so wait a minute before we go to break. Are you saying that elected officials don't want to change taxes in an election year?
It's an interesting thing. I've never seen it before in politics, but I almost suspect some of them like the spending proposals for their constituents, yet don't like to tax them to pay for it. But that's just hyperbole.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I know.
All right, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, Governor Dan McKee wants to make everybody about $20,000 richer, but what would that look like? Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White alongside Ted Nesi. This week we are doing a reporters roundtable breaking down Governor Dan McKee's budget proposal. We are joined by Nancy Lavin from Rhode Island Current and from the Boston Globe, Steph Machado. One of the pillars of Governor McKee's State of the State address, which was on Tuesday, boy, that feels like it was 2 months ago.
This is always a very intense week.
Yes. Was he wants to raise Rhode Islanders' per per capita income by $20,000 by the year 2030. Take a listen from his speech on Tuesday night from the State House.
This year, we're going to set a goal to raise per capita income by a minimum of $20,000 by the year 2030. Just think how much housing insecurity and food insecurity we could address as a state if we double down and work to raise per capita income across Rhode Island, helping every family in our state.
I'll state a fact. I would love $20,000 more dollars a year. That is just a fact. But Nancy, what do we know about his plans to make that happen?
Nothing. Except that there is going to be a plan rolled out in 100 days. He has the director of the League of Cities and Towns and an economic professor at Bryant helping him acting as consultants. But other than that, we know nothing. We saw nothing in the budget about this. And honestly, the budget doesn't necessarily seem to make any moves that would do that. Does borrowing money to make a life sciences school at URI or dedicate a building for the new cybersecurity institute at RIC, ostensibly creating more high-paying jobs, does that automatically translate to $20,000 more? No. Does saving businesses $50 a year on their income taxes translate to $20,000 more in their pockets? Probably not.
All right. Well, we will see within 100 days what that plan is going to look like. But Ted, you talked to or reached out to Gary Sass, who's a former director.
He reached out to me.
Thank you for the clarification. He's a longtime budget watcher. He's a former director of the Department of Administration, and he pointed something out to you.
Yeah, I mean, so when reporters get the text of the speech a little before the governor goes on television, so we get to read it. I was actually reading it on the anchor desk. He's doing the 4 o'clock news between commercial breaks. And I hit that section, and I was like, we were just talking about this, Tim, last week here on Newsmakers with Peter Nerona when we talked about Medicaid and how Rhode Island's poorer than Massachusetts and what a big problem that is. What's the gap between Rhode Island and Massachusetts currently? About $20,000. So when I saw this, my first thought was, oh, wow, governor's setting a goal. Rhode Island's going to catch up to Massachusetts, try to close that gap. And, that would be very difficult. Rhode Island's been falling behind Massachusetts since World War II. So to close that by 2030 would be tough. But I thought, that's a good for him, big goal. Then as frankly people smarter than me started to poke around and think about that, I was getting texts, and then I got an email from Gary Sass the next morning pointing out that the consensus economic forecast, which is what the governor's administration, the House and the Senate adopt every fall to decide how much state revenue is going to grow, already shows state per capita income growing by $20,000 through 2030. So they already think it's going to happen, which raised the question to me, well, what's the governor talking about? Is it just make sure we match what we're already expecting?
Is it on top of the inflation projection?
I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure how much. I think inflation is part of that. I think those are nominal dollars. So I know other reporters like Nancy, you asked, Patrick Anderson at the Journal asked is this 20,000 after inflation? Are we trying to catch Massachusetts? What's our baseline for this? No answers. And so I honestly just don't know right now because the governor's communications office has not been able to explain anything beyond the very basic explanation you heard there. So on the one hand, if it's catch Massachusetts, very tall order, but a goal that you can definitely defend as really important. But I just don't know right now what he actually means.
And this is what happens when you make a big announcement in your state of the state, but you don't have a plan yet. Pesky reporters tend to want specifics.
And there was some of that last year,
and want to understand even the broad strokes of what the goal is here. And we don't have that answer yet, so we'll have to see.
One thing we should spend a little bit of time on here is some big ticket items voters might have to decide upon. And in the budget proposal that came out this week, is the governor's proposing $345 million in proposed bond referendums, again, for voters to decide on. I want to bring up a slide here that breaks this all down. And I want to point out, this is not Channel 12 graphics. This is very kind from Derek Gomes who handles the budget stuff. He gave us a slide deck from the presentation. So briefly breaking it down for everybody, the governor is looking for $135 million for higher ed, which would be, Nancy talked about this the first half, a biomed building at URI and cybersecurity facility at RIC, $60 million for a state archives building, though projections are that will cost a little over $100 million, $50 million for green energy economy. I think in there is $8 million for repairs to the Cliff Walk in Newport. And of course, the one we've already been talking about for weeks and weeks, Ted, a $100 million bond for housing, a big priority for Speaker Shekarchi and others. Look, traditionally, voters approve bond referendums, if this is approved by the General Assembly, of course. And I assume these would be 4 different questions, not all lumped into one. Do you think these have a good shot? Is this, again, a rubber stamp from the voters?
Not clear at all to me. I think you do have to take them apart. The housing bond, Shekarchi, I assume, is inclined toward it, though he's being very cautious about all budget things. But Senate President Ruggiero told, I think, the Globe as well as the Projo, I think told you too, Nancy, in December, he's like, we've given housing a lot of money. I don't know that I want to give another big allocation to them till I see more progress with what they've got now. So you got that. Then you go to that archives bond, which is a big priority of Secretary of State Amore. Speaker Shekarchi told me a couple weeks back, he's very skeptical about putting that amount of money in there. He wants to see if there's other ways to fund this. Again, there'll be a lot of negotiations. This stuff might, there'll be some horse trading, but I don't think these are immediately going right on the ballot in November as proposed.
All right, Nancy, you ready for this? We're going to have to spend some time on Medicaid now.
Oh, boy.
I know. All right, so look, and the reason I want to, first of all, you looked before the show. What is it in the budget?
$4.3 billion currently is the Medicaid budget.
That is state and federal spending, and I won't put you on the
spot.
spot.
It's a third of the budget.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right. So last week we had Attorney General Peter Nerona on the program. We spent a lot of time on Medicaid reimbursements. And so a lot of our viewers might want to know, okay, so we heard from Nerona, we got to increase Medicaid reimbursement rates because that's what the money for people who get that insurance goes to hospitals and goes to doctors. Right. And Nerona says, we're losing doctors because Massachusetts and Connecticut, they pay more in Medicaid reimbursements. Other factors too, but I'm really boiling it down. What do we know from the budget when it comes to Medicaid reimbursement rates?
So there's been this long push to make Rhode Island more competitive with neighboring states on Medicaid reimbursement. McKee's budget is doing that sort of for certain people. So your primary care doctors, they're not seeing anything. And the explanation for that is that the Office of the Health Insurance Commissioner, which put out a report which studied how rate increases would affect certain types of Medicaid providers, hasn't studied primary care providers yet. I'm not really sure why, since that seems to be the thing that people talk about the most. But and don't ask me the list, but other types of Medicaid providers will see their rates increase, not in the single year that the Health Insurance Commissioner recommended, not in the 2-year time frame that the Executive Office of Health and Human Services recommended, but over 3 years, starting this year. And if things continue,
what's the total price?
$200 million over 3 years, $50 million this year.
All right. And in a $4 billion, line item, if you will, it's not a ton of money, so it's unclear to me how much it'll impact what the concern.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the problem. I mean, the healthcare sector is probably the biggest sector, I think, of the Rhode Island economy. As we just said, it's a third of the budget already. So to increase funding in the Medicaid budget enough to really move the needle for all sorts of health providers, you need an enormous amount of money. So $50 million on a base of $4.4 billion. I don't know how much of an effect that's going to have. And you're talking now that those final monies wouldn't come until 2026-27 to get the full rate increase in there. Norona's talking about Fatima and Roger Williams Medical Center closing in 2026.
Right.
But on the other hand, as Brian Daniels has said, the budget director, he just doesn't think we have the money in Rhode Island to do it all at once. You see the deficit's already looking worse when they bake that into future years.
So we have a couple minutes left here, and I really want to bring this up because, Steph, you have done some great reporting on earlier intervention, first when you were with us, and then now with the Boston Globe and PBS. And this budget is potentially good news for EI.
Yes, and this is the one exception to that 3-year phase-in of that Nancy just mentioned. The early intervention Medicaid rates are going to be fully funded if this is approved by the
folks what early intervention
General
is,
Assembly in the first year. So early intervention is the program for infants and toddlers from birth to age 3 who have developmental delays. They have a right under federal law to get a long list of different services, like if speech therapy, if they're nonverbal, physical therapy, all kinds of special education services to help with their developmental disabilities at a very, very young age, with the idea that if you intervene early, it could prevent these children from needing special education function in the future and being out of line developmentally with their peers. This program has been struggling for years, starting in the pandemic. There's a massively long wait list. As of this morning, more than 500 children are waiting longer than the 45 days allowed by federal law. So that's not the total wait list. That's just the children who have been on the wait list longer than 45 days. And there's even more children that are off the wait list because they got evaluated but might not actually be receiving services yet or receiving all of the services that they need. So it's a significant crisis, and the governor did single it out as something that he's going to put the full rate increase in 1 year, starting this October. So we don't know exactly when we'll see the wait list go down significantly.
But 30-second step. I don't understand how the money helps the wait list go down. Explain that.
The children are insured by either Medicaid or a private insurer, and their health insurance pays the providers who say they're going to use that money to attract and retain more staff. And the private insurance companies have to pay at least the Medicaid rate. And so this would raise how much these early intervention providers are being paid.
All right. We had a lot to talk about, but that we are out of time. Nancy Lavin, Rhode Island Current, subscribe to their newsletter. It's great. Of course, Steph Machado from the Boston Globe, subscribe to the Globe. And if you haven't, Ted Nesi's Nesi's Notes on Saturday. It is the best edited column in the region.
And who could the editor be?
We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.